We are very fortunate today to have Joe Clark with us. He's the chairman of the select board, and he is going to do a little bit more of the intro himself, so I'll let him take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thanks
Barb.
for being here, Joe.
Yeah, no, very happy to be here. You know, I know a couple faces in the room, but it's nice to meet with everyone. So as she said, yes, I'm the chair of the select board this year. I joined the board about 2 years ago. I'm born and raised in Hopkinton. You know, I grew up here in town. My parents, you know, spent their careers working for the town. My mom is still a teacher at Hopkins. My dad's retired as the fire chief in town. You know, I think we just hit 10 years since he retired. But so I joined the board 2 years ago and just really hope to kind of have that, you know, volunteer experience in town, just give back to the community that's given, you know, so much to me. You know, and about 9 years ago, I moved back. My wife and I, you know, we're raising our 2 daughters here in town. I've got a first grader and then a 4-year-old. So, you know, we're very happy to be part of the community. But, you know, Barb had mentioned something with the select board, and I don't know if everyone's kind of familiar with the select board. You know, I think there's kind of different interpretations of its role here in town. You know, some people think, oh, well, the select board runs the town. It's very much not the case. Yeah, I feel confident saying that. But it is kind of the governing board, you know, the chief, you know, policymaker in town. You know, I think about our town government. It's an open meeting town government, right? So all the real decisions get made, you know, every year at town meeting. Ours is coming up the first Saturday, I believe it's the first Saturday in May. So, you know, any residents can attend. We can always use more voters coming for that. So really it's the board's responsibility in between town meetings, and if we need a special town meeting to kind of, you know, stay on top of the policy, you know, work with our town leaders. We obviously have a great town manager. We have a lot of wonderful department heads, and they, in my mind, really run the town on the day-to-day aspect. You know, we don't get involved with the day-to-day, but we do provide oversight for things like, you know, right now the big thing's the budget cycle, right? As we prepare for town meeting in May, making sure the budget's aligned and prepared and, you know, and balanced. That's the most important thing. So yeah, that was just kind of a quick overview. Barb was, you know, kind enough to give me a couple things that she thought would be, you know, nice to kind of talk about. So, you know, I'm happy to talk through a few, but for the most part, I just came for Q&A. So if anyone has questions around anything with the board, with the town, I'm happy to go through that. But I'll start. You know, I think, you know, we talked about, you know, some of the accomplishments from last year, some things we're looking at for this year. You know, I think last year, we were really fortunate when we were doing the budget and heading to the town meeting. We were actually able to save some money, move some money into stabilization. Really important because, you know, most residents know this coming year is really the first year where our residents are going to feel the impact of the tax increases. We've voted on a lot of important projects here in town over the last couple of years. You know, in addition to Hopkins School, and then obviously the very large project to replace Elmwood School with Charleswood. Which that construction is underway. So while those are extremely important projects, and, you know, we need to continue to support our school system, we recognize that it's putting stress on a lot of our taxpayers, and that really starts to kick in this year. So, you know, being able to save some money last year to put aside for some of these upcoming years is going to be critical because, you know, we still have a lot of projects that we need to do and prioritize. And it's going to be challenging for a few years. I think beyond that, you know, another very important one was we probably had I'll go on record for the shortest special town meeting ever. We had one thing, you know, we found a way to, you know, our CFO working with the Department of Revenue identified a situation where our residents were going to potentially be, you know, billed more on their taxes, you know, starting this January. And so we kind of rushed into a special town meeting. We had one agenda item, and I think we were in and out in 15 minutes with great attendance. So that was, that was very important to see. And then really, as I look ahead to kind of this next year, we as a board, every year we kind of do goals for everything. So, I think one of the big ones is, like I mentioned, the FY27 budget. Like, that needs to be balanced. We need to kind of look ahead at, both the budget and then capital projects and, start to prioritize those things. I think right now we are in good shape where it's looking like we'll be able to balance that. Again, our biggest concern is always avoiding an override, Proposition 2.5. Those overrides are where most people know that's what hits your taxes, for an increase. So anything we can do to avoid those things is great. Again, we're in the middle of the budget conversations now. We've probably seen, almost a half of the departments kind of present their budgets to the board at a meeting. So over the next few meetings, we'll go through those. And again, we're looking in good shape for this year right now. So I'm very pleased with that. Another big one is, ensuring, clean and reliable drinking water. There's been a lot of conversation over the last couple of years with PFAS and, I think for a while we were giving rebates for residents to buy bottled water. We did get that kind of cleaned up last year, so our levels are below the state and EPA certified levels, but we still have an issue moving forward with, we want to make sure we have plenty of supply of drinking water, but then also it's clean as well. And Hopkinton, for people that have been here a long time, we have hard drinking water, right? Iron, manganese, it's just our area. It's always been like that. So, a big conversation right now is our MWRA connection. So that would be the town linking into the state water resources. It would be a very large project. It is not cheap, let's put it that way, but it would supply, clean and plenty of volume for water moving forward. So that's going to be a big decision over the next, couple of years. We don't have anything on town meeting this year for it, but it's something to, pay attention to. And then, another goal we have is to just always kind of think about the town charter, right? So the select board, governs under the town charter, but every couple of years we kind of need to do a review process and go through that and understand, is the charter really reflective of what we want as a town today? And so there's a lot of effort that goes into that. We create a whole separate committee. That process has just kind of started to do that right now, and that will be, months, over the next year at least, I'll say, of work for that committee to kind of get feedback from the town and understand, are there things that we need to change and, make adjustments to better suit, our community today. Beyond that, I think she asked, a great question about the progress on economic development officer. This is something that I think a lot of people want to see. For me, economic development, goes back to our residents, live in a great town with great schools, but we pay high taxes. And so, I like to think of what are we getting for those taxes? And, Hopkinton, historically, we don't have 100 restaurants, as everyone knows, right? We've got some very nice restaurants in town, but we've got some nice shops, but there could always be more so that people aren't driving into other towns. So the idea is to get someone, a salaried employee that will focus on bringing new business to Hopkinton. It can provide resources. I think, if we look at kind of the loftiest goals of this, it would be, could we help offset the residential tax rate with more of a commercial tax rate? I'll be honest, that is we love that idea, but we are at, call it 82-83% residential right now from our tax revenue. So it's going to be, just being honest, it's going to be very difficult to kind of change that tax burden and move that over to the commercial side. But if we're not trying, then we know for a fact nothing's going to change. So that one's really interesting too, because I think we're coming up on 2 years since the town meeting, or a year and a half from the special town meeting, where we implemented a local meals excise tax. So anyone that eats at a Hopkinton restaurant, there's I forget if it's a 0.75 or 0.25, it's 0.75% that gets added on. And, I think, you know, you never want to add new taxes, right? But this is the only tax that we could think of that, you know, one, it's common. It's all the surrounding towns with the exception of maybe Holliston. I forget off the top of my head, but most of the surrounding towns that you would go eat in have this tax already. And the thing I like is it's the one tax that, you know, non-residents can pay for the benefit of Hopkinton. And we didn't, so we just got through our first year, and I think we're seeing about 200,000 in annual tax revenue for that, which everyone was very pleased by. And, you know, if you look at our overall town budget, you know, 200,000, you know, could be considered a drop in the bucket.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But the fact that we geared it specifically towards economic development. So, you know, part of that obviously is the economic development officer, but in the meantime, you know, we could start by issuing grants to, you know, anyone that wants to start a new business, if they're thinking about it, come open that business in Hopkinton. There can be money that can be accessible for you to help get off the ground in that first year or two, which, you know, historically is very challenging for small businesses. So we've got a lot of flexibility there with that. So I'm excited to see where that goes. That position is now budgeted for FY27. So we'll probably see something here after town meeting to kind of open that up and, you know, hopefully find someone that can help there. What do we want to talk about? I mentioned town meeting briefly, very important. The first Saturday of May. This is actually the first time we're doing it on a Saturday.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was made at the last town meeting in hopes of driving more attendance, hoping that people, you know, we know everyone's very busy with their jobs and, you know, if they have children, you know, childcare. So an effort was put forward to kind of make that change. It was, you know, well received at town meeting. So this will be our first one. So, you know, fingers crossed it does, you know, bring in more voters to town meeting. I think, you know, typically, you know, we'll have, you know, 300-400 people. And, you know, frankly, it's not enough. We have 19,000 residents, you know, I think roughly 10,000 registered voters. And for the big decisions in town to be decided on by only 300 or 400, it's just, I don't know, I don't love that. So I'd love to see how any way that we can drive more attendance. It's only going to be good for the town, regardless of what's being voted on. Talked a little bit about kind of.
Do
Yep.
you want to kind of take questions as we go?
Yeah, I'm happy to pause. Yep.
So I have a question on that. Do you foresee any way to let people vote from their homes?
No, not currently. I think we've made, you know, I don't even want to call it exceptions, but for those with disabilities, some things can be done. But really the intent is for it to be an in-person live thing. It's always at the middle school auditorium where there's plenty of capacity. So I don't see that change happening anytime soon.
Same topic. What incentives are you going to offer on Saturday, childcare, whatever? Because the median age is low, from my perspective, is lower than many towns. And with the school's age of your kids, it's very important to have younger people there. Childcare is an issue, and I lived in a town where there would be availability to purchase lunch, there was childcare provided, etc. So how are we going to get more people there? Because I agree with you, it's a sad situation when so few people participate.
I mean, it's a possibility to set up volunteers through like something like our committee, like something through the volunteer. Like I would volunteer hours. Like, can we put something out to volunteer hours for for childcare at the center, like at the school, middle school, where you go to vote?
Arlene, that's tricky because you do get into licensing things and all that.
Yeah,
Correct.
Liability.
Yeah, correct. So kind of both those things, childcare and then just, you know, food, like how we're going to do that. Those ideas are still being worked on. We've got a couple of people like, you know, our town clerk is wonderful, and he's got, you know, he was actually one of the ones, excuse me, that spearheaded this effort to move it to Saturday. So over the next couple of meetings, especially with us, it's one of the things that, you know, we're looking for that input. You know, frankly, we have nothing planned right now because this is our first time, but we're open to all of that. Because again, to your point, anything that drives more attendance is, you know, I think everyone's supportive.
By having certain
volunteers.
Yep.
You know,
What is the capacity of the school auditorium?
That's a great question.
Because we did have a meeting, a Saturday meeting in 2021 because of COVID.
Yeah,
It was a
that's
Saturday, it was outside.
Right.
But that auditorium isn't that big, and when we've had bigger meetings, we've had it at the high school in the gym.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. If we think we're really going to get over that, because right now I think we've always used like the gym in the middle school as like overflow, right? Which is a good overflow. It's a good thing in this scenario, right? But so we have like we can pull the bleachers out there. That's already kind of set up to accommodate that, and then you know, if it goes beyond that, yeah, I think the high school gym is our next biggest place. Just not as comfortable as the auditorium seats for several hours. So we'll see, but it's a great point.
One of the things I've noticed is that the younger crowd comes for the vote on the schools.
Yep.
And as soon as that vote is done, they head for the hills and they leave. And we're just praying that we have a quorum left to finish the rest of the agenda. Is there any way that maybe you could put like those things at the end? So they have to sit through for a little while to get their input into the rest of the town?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we can absolutely do things like that, whether it's at the end or like the middle, or weave them in and out. No,
Yeah.
because you're right. Like whether it's at the beginning or the end of, like people will show, like you've seen it. People will show up right. They're like, hey, we're at agenda item 43.
Right.
You know, 47 is coming up in the next 10, 15
Right.
minutes. You will see people come in at that time, and
In the meantime, I've sat there for an hour trying to get a quorum to come to start the meeting, town meeting.
Correct. It's like I agree with you. It's very frustrating, and short of locking the doors once everyone comes in. Obviously, I'm joking, but I can't think of anything else that we can really do.
Question. You're talking about business development. Is there a vision around the International Marathon Center that's being built, and how businesses around that could grow in the long term? Like, for example, if you look at the International Tennis Hall of Fame in Newport, and all the business and activity that comes just because of that. Now, I know marathon is kind of a once-a-year thing, but there's a lot of empty buildings from the Dell EMC stuff.
And that's Weston.
Can we have like a vision of what businesses could possibly grow if the heart of the town gets this marathon center?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one I'm personally very excited about. So I think it was a year or two ago, the town provided the 26.2 Foundation a 99-year lease right down here on East Main Street to build that. And it's just what you said. It's the hope is for it to be like the Hall of Fame for the running community, right? Like it is not a Boston Marathon like museum by any means. It's targeted after, I think, is it the world like 8 or 9 like major marathons. So it's really tapping into this, what everyone agrees is a massive running community in the country. And I think it's, not clearly represented in regards to other sports. So, to answer your questions, like specifically around like what businesses can benefit from that, I think all of them. It will drive, like tourism to town. So I kind of see it as like a rising tide thing, right? Where all businesses would benefit from that, You get off 495, you drive through town, you see the marathon center, you stop for lunch, you stop for gas, like all those things that would just come naturally with it. I just can't think to anything specifically that we don't have today that we can say, hey, we need this here because we're building a marathon center, but it's a great
Well, if you
point.
have large empty buildings on the west side of town that could become athletic centers. I mean, if people are coming for a running community, can you have events, indoor, outdoor events? Take advantage of the real estate that's underutilized today. How can it be utilized in the future on the theme of sports?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's a wonderful idea because South Street, we do have vacant buildings and there's a lot of opportunity there, right? I think, and a lot of those buildings, frankly, are older. They need like new investment to drive new businesses to come in. I think the biggest problem right now is if you just look at the economy and stuff, it's not a great time for businesses to be investing in, you know, a new facility or moving somewhere else. I think that's, you know, that's not a Hopkinton problem. I think that's a, you know, a nationwide problem. You know, businesses are reluctant to make large investments because there's so much uncertainty going on right now. But I agree with you, South Street is the perfect place to do a lot of those things.
And the new economic development person would spearhead
Yeah.
all this
W-
now and into the future
Ab-
of the economy.
Absolutely. Like that's what they're getting paid for,
That's their mission.
right?
And
Like,
the population, I know, you know, I don't know off the top of your head, but has the population, I mean, over the past like 2 to 3 years, what has the population of Hopkinton done? Has it grown exponentially since since the Lumber Street and all of it, you know, development down there? Because that affects the school development, that affects so much of what we have to do in the town with the population, you know, going up. Is it a town, is it a city? You know, at what point does that change?
yeah, it's a great question. I don't have specifics, especially on like a short view. I know it wasn't very long ago, you know, maybe 15, 20 years or so before like legacy farms and stuff, that we were in that 14,000.
13,
14,000
Yeah.
residents. Now, you know, we're at 19, right? So like that is in the span of less than 20 years, that is massive growth, right? And it's certainly like that's the reason we need to make so many investments in the schools, build new ones, additions. And you know, I think the schools does a great job of working with consultants to try and like, you know, forecast what that student enrollment's going to look like. And so far it seems to be, you know, fairly accurate, you know, this third party that they work with. But I mean, I think there's some still unknown there, right?
Yeah.
And you know, frankly, right now, you know, we don't have a ton of free land that, you know, we can put large developments into. So I think we need to, you know, we can't really
It's
count
into
on
permits.
yeah, we can't count on, my biggest point is we can't count on new development tax revenue that we could in previous years. Like, we were very fortunate for a while. We can't count on that right now.
Go on. Right, exactly. Thank you.
Why is there such a delay in the MWRA connection when back 3, 4, 5 years ago, when they knew there were problems with well 6, that then it was going to be a couple of years, and then now it's a couple of years, and it doesn't seem to ever get resolved. And I know for a fact that well over now probably close to 15 years, the MWRA warned Hopkinton with the growth that was occurring, that they were going to have a problem with water. And it seems that that's pushed out. I've been buying water because I live on Victory, so I get it directly from well 6.
Yep.
4 or 5 years, 4
Yeah.
or 5 years. And it's, you know, you're supposed to just take that and another $100 a month that you're paying for water to drink, to cook.
Yeah.
This is unconscionable to me that there's delays like this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like, something that's so fundamental is like drinking water. It should move quicker. It's what we've seen though is there's, you know, one, it's a challenging process just working with the state on that level. You know, I think they explored things like, you know, tapping into more water from Ashland, right? Like, there was options over the years that, you know, that they thought they were going to go down, and then those kind of fell over. So now this one going like through Southborough,
Right.
you know, we've got to work with Southborough. Also, just in general, like we need for the town to, you know, collectively decide on that. It's a very large investment, right? And, you know, at the same time, I think, you know, there's the town is, you know, both town employees and, you know, residents that care are focused on, you know, hey, what is the best option? And while it, you know, it sounds like MWRA, they're still exploring also the idea of treating the existing water supply, right? And, you know, I think both options, there's, you know, a level of uncertainty around them. And the only certainty for sure is, you know, high investment cost, right?
But it doesn't seem to be still a priority.
It you know, from our view, it is a priority. You know, like, I think right now we're working on the intermunicipal agreement with Southborough, right? And then at the previous town meetings, we've we voted for, I'm trying to remember what we call them. But basically, we need to do a level of planning, like, engineered plans that you present to the state. Like, they have to get, so far along, and then you like kind of go to that water resource board, and they start the process. So it's a very time consuming thing, but I assure you that stuff is moving forward, albeit, slower than we would all want it to be.
Well, we got our first few articles for the meeting.
Huh?
I'm just teasing. Silly. I think we got a good couple articles for the meeting coming up in May, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
I have a question about the downtown development.
Yep.
Is it finished except for repaving?
Yeah, so all the work is done,
Okay.
right? And so I think, if you saw, we did like the final paving pretty much up to like the police and fire station. And then they will be back in the spring. It's just, I'm not sure if it's gonna be before the marathon or after, because everyone saw with the Main Street Corridor project, we stop all work 2 weeks before the marathon, make sure the downtown's ready. I think everyone would like for it to be done for the marathon, because it really looks nice, but it'll be right around that time frame, depending. And
Hopefully
again,
it snows.
well, that's I was just gonna say, like, that's the variable we can't control, and it's been a cold winter so far.
Right.
Joe, I live on Sanctuary off of Chandler. 15 minutes to get out of the street. What is going to happen when the other school opens? It is insane.
It's so I live very close to you on Claw Farm. I'm
Okay.
on the other side of Chamberlain, so I see
Yes.
I completely
Yes.
see it.
We're gonna be driving by your house to
Yeah.
get out,
To go out,
Teresa.
Yep.
to go
I-
out.
Hey, the trucks leaving the Charleswood site, come right. They take a turn right at my house. We don't have many options, and so I'm only saying that because I completely agree with you. I see it every day, and frankly, I have no issues with it because I know there's limited options for them to get trucks in and out, and then but for the actual traffic problem, I think. I'll be honest, I don't have a direct answer for it. My hope is that, if you look at the buses, we would have, hopefully some efficiencies that could be gained from, buses coming through. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest problem is, and this is just my opinion from sitting in traffic and going,
Right.
is, we have a lot of kids getting dropped off at school instead of taking the buses.
Yes.
It's,
Yes.
there's, frankly, there's no.
We personally, the people in Sanctuary, have an issue. They're crossing from, not Elm School, from Hopkins. Parents are lined up on Sanctuary, waiting for their kids
To walk through the woods.
to walk through the
Interesting.
woods on our property. And they are rude, 55, 65 miles an hour. They fly down that road. You get them in the morning and you get them in the afternoon.
And it is a private road.
Yes,
And it's
it's a
posted
private
as
road, we've got signs.
I think it's a school committee issue that needs to be discussed with the
They
school.
called the school committee, they called the police department, nobody's helping us.
Yeah.
And that road maintenance is our responsibility, the plowing.
Oh, really? Oh, if it's a private road,
It's
yeah.
a private road.
So.
So if you go and tell the parents with a sign this big, no picking up students, they'll say to you, I pay taxes.
Yeah.
They don't get the issue, it's a private road,
Yeah.
and that the residents from that street are paying for everything.
And it would be nice if it was a public road, then our plowing would be paid
Yes.
My question is, why are there so many drop-offs? Is that all due to the fact that we charge for buses now?
I would just be, it's a great question. I would just be speculating, right? I think it's,
We charge for buses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
not
did you-
really elementary, isn't it like?
I
I think it's
I-
from Hopkins on, like, Center and, not Center, Marathon, and I think Elmwood, they don't pay, and then when they get to, Hopkins, there's a bus fee.
It was 200 a year when my kids were in. That's a while ago, so I don't know what it is now.
And they're having
I
potential.
don't
But again,
remember.
the school committee, deals with a lot of the questions around that I don't really imagine.
Yeah, it's just kind of out of like our board, it's out of our purview, right? Like it's more, and again, you know, we can be like advocates for things like this. You can talk about, hey, like this is an issue that we're seeing, and it's,
Right.
you know, if another board or committee's not getting, like, you know, we welcome that feedback at our meetings during our like public forum, because you know, I'll be honest, like I see the people on Chamberlain, but I never drive down Sanctuary, so I'm right next to them. I'm completely unaware of that.
Well, and there were, yeah, and there was supposed to be an opening coming off of, you know, the main drag coming down, like I said. There was supposed to be, yeah, what was that
Wayland.
road? Yeah, Wayland, and that didn't come through, so they ended up building a lot of houses there, but there was no extra access there.
Yeah.
Again, so when something like that happens, then the effect is felt by all of us, right?
Yeah.
And especially in that
We
area.
voted against it because they were gonna be coming from Main Street
So,
through Wayland and Chamberlain.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just, you know,
Not to
trying
go
to
through
make sure we
town.
have the right
Yeah.
communication on these articles that we want, and that's a big one. You know, like you said, schools and traffic, to get kids to the schools, bus stop, drop, something's big.
Yeah. It's certainly going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Jim, just another aspect, because we're on Main Street, but then there's people. What's the focus in the budget, in your discussion for human resources in terms of the Department of Public Health and Youth and Family Services and some of the other human services? I know with another hat, I'm part of a coalition that has been meeting. But with the economy, you know, our elderly, our low-income populations, but just health, et cetera, you know, you get bulletins of all that. And I just in terms of the budget,
Yeah.
are those departments going to, I mean, like youth and family is totally under budget.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I completely agree, and you know, there's a lot of factors that go into that. So, you know, if you go back to our meeting last Tuesday, I think it was the 3rd. You know, you can catch the replay of the meeting. You might not want to, but we actually did the youth and family services and the board and the health department budgets, and like I agree with you. They do a lot of work, and it might, you know, not be for like, first of all, they can't touch everyone in town, right? They do the best that they can, but the budget is really tough because, you know, I think we talked about it with youth and family services. Like the budget actually lowered this year because they had an opening for a position, you know, for a social worker that they couldn't fill. You know, kind of speaking to your comments around like the rest of like the economy and like the job market, like they couldn't fill it, and so it wasn't like we wanted to take that money away, but they were like, you know, we tried, we interviewed people, like they offered a couple people, you know, and then those people didn't come through. So it was like there's multiple factors that impacts it, and it's really sad to see because, you know, those departments are providing wonderful services to a lot of people in town, and they don't get enough credit for it. So I agree with you. I think the board is, you know, very supportive of, you know, if we can find ways to, you know, support them more, increase the budget. It's, again, we're just in a challenging, you know, financial situation these next couple of years, but critical services.
I have a bigger question about the town growth. When we moved here in '89, there were about 9,000 people. So 36 years later, there's 19,000. And I'm wondering if the town meeting form of government is even appropriate anymore.
Yeah, that is a wonderful question, right? And you know,
Should become a city.
that's what you were alluding to before. Like, you know, I don't see us like moving to like a city like approach.
Is that the next step?
Well, I mean, it's an option, right? I think, you know, I feel strongly that, you know, if you look at like town government, from everything that I've seen, there is no perfect, you know, answer to it. Like every option kind of has its flaws. You know, I think, you know, I even though it's flawed, I think what we have, you know, still represents Hopkinton well. You know, it's run a lot by, you know, volunteer, like our board, you know, it's volunteers, right? I think the alternative to that would be if you look at like a city council is, you know, paid board members then you're getting, potentially career politicians. I don't know. I personally don't like that, right?
Sure,
Like,
no.
like at least with the
And
volunteers.
The planning boards need to be, right.
But so it just, I don't know. I think, there could be some benefits to a change. I just don't know what that change would look like. But, again, that's why we can have citizen articles proposed for town meeting. We can have people come to, again, we're doing the charter review process, right? So anyone that has ideas about that, I'd encourage them, please, like, get involved with the charter review committee. Because that's where we would start making those changes if we wanted to.
I thought that the charter review committee has already been established.
So it has,
Okay.
and I think I can't remember if it's filled all the seats off the top of my head. It might have.
I was thinking it had.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, can a citizen then just write something as a suggestion to that committee? 'Cause that would be.
That was going to be my next thing. I don't remember the specifics on how they're meeting and when they're meeting and stuff, but like any board or committee in town, like we look for feedback. We try and represent the community as a whole. So the more people that come up and talk about a different topic and give a different perspective on things, the better it is for all of the boards and committees. So I think that's just what people should do. Again, if all those seats are filled, and that was done recently. I know, probably back in January, we were filling a couple of seats for that at one of our meetings.
Yeah.
And so it's very new. I would be shocked if they aren't proactively looking for feedback from residents on that.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be something like, I'm happy to take a note and bring that up, at one of our meetings to talk
Yeah, it
about
would be good to.
how can we just
Publish.
communicate
Yeah.
to everyone.
Exactly, just so that people
Yeah.
know that even though that the committee has already been formed, that
Yep.
you can still have input.
Yeah.
And something that I forgot to send you, after the last meeting, when you guys were sort of brainstorming about how to notify people, what can you do to get businesses to help with the town meeting being on a Saturday? I did a whole thing about all these ideas of how the town could help advertise it. It's right here, I have it to you, but I'm going to.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I tell
Yeah.
everyone, like if you have an idea, please bring it up. Like
It's-
yeah,
there's a bunch of stuff that I think would be helpful. I mean, you don't have to do it, but it's just input.
Yeah,
Just
well,
input.
and again, it's not like our board, doesn't decide these things like on our own, right? It's, we talk about it and we just try and come up with ideas like what's best for town meeting, which is obviously what's best for the town. So we are always looking for feedback like that. And so thank you.
Sure, thank you.
This was great.
And the select board on your website, you have a list of the boards and committees that have vacancies that anyone can go and look at. And if you're interested, and you can apply for that, right?
Correct. Yeah, we unfortunately always have vacancies.
Right.
And, sometimes people will have, 2 openings for one committee and, 4 people apply for it. And the thing we always tell them is, first of all, thank you for stepping up, right? It's just to get people to volunteer for these things. We know it's not easy. So, I think everyone is very appreciative of the people that do raise their hand to do something. But then the next thing we say is, hey, I know you're interested in this for, whatever, these 3 reasons, but we have all these vacancies, and we could use people anywhere. And very rarely does, your background or what you did for your profession matter when it comes to these committees. It's just, spending your time and, in giving back to some aspect of town. Yeah.
Absolutely. Volunteers. Okay. Well, then,
Any other questions? Anything we didn't cover?
thank you for coming in and doing this.
No, I'm happy to. This has been great.
What's the status of the economic development person?
So as of today, we've got that first year of tax revenue, so I think we can actually pay for them to start now. But we put it into the budget, so that budget is obviously being approved. and the budget will be voted on at town meeting beginning of May. So I would expect, again, if the budget gets approved at town meeting as we expect it to, you would see an opening for it shortly after that in May. So we're just kind of in that in-between area where we obviously don't want to post a position before the town votes on it.
Great.
Thank you, Joe.